Welcome back to the Grand Hotel. I am Zoe Clark. As Michigan policymakers debate the future of public education, educators, school leaders across the state are grappling with challenges ranging from school funding and teacher shortages to student mental health and political polarization. For this conversation, we're turning to Ken Gutman, Superintendent of Oakland Schools. Hello. So good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Greg Nyen, Superintendent, Marquette-Alger Regional Education Service Agency. Hello, Greg.
Good afternoon.
Great to have you. And Erik Edoff, Senior Executive Director, the Michigan Education Association. Good
Hello.
to see you again.
Thank you.
Okay, we are talking school, we are talking education, so I'm going to look for some grades. Erik, grade the state of education policy in our state right now.
I think it's a mixed grade. I think there are a lot of things that are going well, and then there's a lot of momentum behind, but there's certainly a long way to go in terms of funding and consistency of policy, in terms of making sure that students are prepared and families are behind the entire system. There's a lot of work to go, but I do think there have been things that have been started that are going to show progress, that are going to show positive movement. We just have to be consistent and keep moving forward.
Okay, Ken, same question.
Yeah, so I'm going to give us a D. And I'm going to say that not because of what happens in the classroom, because what happens in our classrooms and our schools is incredible. I'm going to say in terms of policy, though, we have a lot of work to do. We still don't get a budget done on time, so we can't plan accurately. We still aren't able to staff how we need to staff. We still don't have an accountability system that's consistent for a number of years. We go back and forth between R's and D's, and we never know what the target is. So there's a long way to go. The D is overall as a system, including the legislature. It is not for what happens in the classroom.
Greg, same question. Give us a grade.
Yeah, I would agree with my colleagues. I think that there are some bright spots, and there's also some work that's yet to be done. I think I'm encouraged by the fact that we've got a good start to the budget being on time this year. We still have some policy language that needs to be worked out, language that's friendly to all, and especially student-focused.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about this U-turn policy, as it's been called so far this week. You know, we're talking about Michigan's House being on fire, and some of that has to do with some of the student grades and student reading scores, for example. And one of the things that Sandy Barua, CEO of the Chamber, keeps talking about is this idea that we are a purple state, right? Which means we are a swing state. So we swing back and forth between Republicans and Democrats. We also swing back and forth with policy, though, because of that. So Ken, I'm curious to hear from you, how big of this sort of loop back and forth is behind your D grade?
It's mostly behind my D grade. That and funding. And I want to come back to that. But
please.
So here's the target now. We're going to go through A through D or A through E grading. Now we're going to go to a color system. Now we're going to go to this other system. As educators, give us the target, hold it in place for 5 years, fund it on time, and then we'll hit those targets. But when you have to go back and forth every 2 years, every 4 years, there's a reason we're sliding. When you look at the underfunding for the last 20 years of education, not having inflationary increases, not knowing what our funding would be, it's predictable that our scores would drop. Our scores need to get better, but we also need to know what the target is and have support.
How do we do that, Erik?
So I think it is the continuing work to make education not a polarized topic. Public education, all education is important to everyone, no matter where you are in the state, no matter who you vote for, in rural areas and urban areas. And I think people recognize that, but the political football that has centered around education over the last few cycles has been very damaging. It's been very hurtful. And I think what you see in other states that have been more successful, and that's a debate for another time, it is not that they are purple, red, or blue. It is that they've been consistent. And in many states that have shown consistency, they are high funding states, medium funding states, but they have stuck with something. They have shown the support. In states that are being touted lately, it has been 6 years before measurable growth was. It is not a miracle, it is a marathon. 6 years of no change, of constant support, of funding that is predictable, and then 10 years before growth is measurable. So if we can get to something like that in Michigan, I think many of us are not stuck on what the system should be or what the program should be. It's just leave it in place and fund it properly.
Greg, do you agree that at this point any policy is better than, back and forth policy?
No.
Okay.
I would couch that response in the fact that we talk a lot about red states and blue states and purple states and policy that aligns with a specific color, but students don't care
Sure.
if it's red, blue, or purple. They just show up to the classroom every day. And are we providing, as a state, the resources that our educators need, that our families need, and are those resources reflected in the policy? I think it's really hit and miss in our state. And when we talk about accountability measures, everybody wants to bake accountability measures into policies, especially when it comes with a budget allocation. But accountability measures just for the sake of a measure doesn't make sense. We need to be very thoughtful about what metrics we want to apply and then tie that back to the efficacy of the resource allocation in total. There needs to be an accountability measure, but it needs to be thoughtful.
Ken, what metrics should we be thinking about?
I think there are multiple metrics. So we have to look at our scores, but we have to look at a mix between achievement and improvement, because it really depends on where you are in the state and where your scores are. It's not just all about achievement. If you're seeing significant improvement, I think that's a good measure too. I think that varies by student and by building, so we have to be really careful. What I would urge is that we have educators involved in the design. When budgets get made and plans get made in Lansing without educator input, that's where we get in trouble. And I love our legislators individually, but when you don't consult the people who do this every day and you just decide this is what's good because I was in school and had this experience, you end up hurting children.
Erik, who else needs to be at the table when we're talking about solutions?
So I think it is politicians need to be at the table, practitioners need to be at the table, administrators need to be at the table. I think it is a wraparound solution, and without everyone at the table, you're going to have a failure to implement consistently and over a long period of time. That is the entire problem, because one person picks it up or one group picks it up and carries it forward without everyone else being on the same page. I mean, I think collectively labor and management have been at the same table on these issues for a number of years, and we have very little differences between us, and it's now that the politics have to catch up with where we are, where we know we're ready to move forward and we are moving forward. I just think that when one person or when one group decides that they have a quick fix or they have a new idea, that's put us in trouble.
Well, I don't want to just talk quick fixes or new ideas, but I am curious if you're looking for success stories, Greg, and where you're finding them.
Success stories? There are many. I think the CTE offerings in our state are currently exploding. We have a number of new frontiers right now with aviation programs popping up across the state, addressing a very dire need in our aviation industry, air travel. We've got artificial intelligence, which is creating quite a conversation on both sides of the issue, of course, but it seems that it's here to stay. So how do we learn to live with it and live with it responsibly? So I think we've got a number of wins, especially when you get into the individual classroom. We've got great educators, and that's the heart of any public education system.
Ken, before we wrap, I'd love to hear from you too. Success stories, where are you looking?
So many in terms of achievement and growth, but I want to double down on CTE because this myth that everyone has to go to college should have been dispelled a long time ago. Our CTE programs, I'm going to brag about Oakland, we have 4 of them. We have students in culinary and cosmetology and auto. We have welders leaving high school making 6 figures. There are so many wonderful success stories in CTE, and yet our students can have that CTE experience and still go to college. Lots of good things happening.
Ken, Greg, Erik, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.